right? All right, so goal setting and visual data to improve psychological competence. Now, we all know fighters by now, right? 90% once you step into the cage is all psychological. Most of the time, what I tell Dustin, in some things, I always tell him he's the best in the world. Even if he looks shitty on one day. Because I know him. And if he doesn't feel like he's the best every day, it's going to negatively affect his skills training. When it negatively affects his skills training, he starts to think negative thoughts inside that can go into his performance in the cage. Right now, this kid feels like he's on top of the fucking world, which is bad news for Eddie Alvarez. Okay? And that's just one case. I have many different others. And I'll talk about them because I want to make sure that you guys understand that even at the highest level, you have to deal with this situation. Okay? It eliminates overthinking and sporadic training decisions. Like I said, throwing shit at the wall, trying to make it stick, right? We actually can understand exactly what we need to do when we get in there, what's our purpose for that day. But I'm going to tell you right now, even though you have a system in place, be ready to auto-regulate every day because they're always beat up. They're always sore, especially if you got pro athletes training multiple times throughout the day. They're going to have bumps and bruises, and you have to be able to auto-regulate and move things around so that they don't overtrain and they maintain that level of progression. Okay? All right. Induces balance in fight camp, eliminating non-functional overreaching and overtraining, like we talked about. Okay? Any questions here? We're good? Okay, so programming performance, purely situational and subjective. So when it comes down to periodization, right? And I'm going to talk about all the schemes and all the models that we have now from all the Russians, all the Soviet Union. Like, that stuff works. Don't get me wrong. The one thing that people don't know is they all hated each other. And they all thought their shit was the best. Here's what I think. I think they all work. As long as you put it in the right context. Right? Context and situations are going to be the key to putting that plan in place. Okay? Weight classes. You have to indicate what weight classes they are, right? What weight class is going to be more beneficial for that, or what I should say is what program is going to be more beneficial per athlete. Heavyweights have a higher knockout ratio than lightweights. Okay? Vice versa, you have girls, you have guys. The 115 pounders for the females, obviously going to need a little bit more endurance-based training over the 145 pound females because there's higher levels of knockout ratios. So fights end earlier. And this isn't just from me. This is statistical data that we got from the UFC Performance Institute. Okay? Life and training age. What I mean by that is you either got some older guys and girls that's been training for a long fucking time, like a King Mo the Wall who's been in the game forever. I'm not going to train him the same way as I train a 22-year-old kid, right? This is the difference between collegiate and pro athletic. Well, I can't say pro because you do have, like in pro football, you have your veterans, you have your rookies. Obviously, you're not going to train your veteran just like your rookie. Okay, they've been through it too many times. Now it's all about restoration and getting them back on the field as well as possible. Same thing with MMA, right? If I know a guy like Mo, he's been wrestling for years. He doesn't have to wrestle that much, right? So he's not going to beat his body down like that. He needs to be in the weight room and actually controlling all of his movement patterns and getting him better at moving because he's fucking beat up. He can't move in general because of all of the impacts that he's acquired through the years. Okay? Experience in and out of the weight room. Okay? A lot of the times you're going to get novice weightlifting athletes because they're fighters. They haven't been in the weight room like that. Unless they've played a sport that required them to be in the weight room, you're going to have to treat them like beginners. Okay? So, compound movements, right? Easily effective but efficient exercises and movement patterns that they can do going to actually cause a progressive stimulation. But The same thing. If they do not have that ability, we're not going to put it on them. If they don't have the prerequisites to do a movement, I'm not going to put it on them. Okay? All right? Inter-individual and intra-individual differences. Okay? Fight camp duration, how long we have as far as the duration of time. Sometimes you'll get a fighter that comes in with 4 weeks out. Sometimes you'll get a fighter that's 12 weeks out. So you have to understand what we can do from that, that situation. Some guys take fights on short notice. So what are we going to do from there? We can't put together a full program because they might fight the next day. See what I'm saying? So we have to make sure we put that into place. Okay? Training schedules, and that includes the skills and tactical training that they're going to be doing. You have to take into account what they're doing that morning, what they're doing at night, and how you can correlate what you need to do from a weightlifting perspective, resistance training and aerobic training, so that it doesn't clash with the bioenergetic demands of the skills training. So you're not throwing the organism in two different directions, okay? Type of opponent. Now this is getting lower on the hierarchy. We don't really care too much about that. That's not our job. Our job is to get them physically prepared. But if they are fighting a predominantly, if they're fighting a wrestler that's predominantly more of a grinder, then we know we have to improve on lactic capabilities, okay? Sporting background and strength and weaknesses. So like I said, if they have a Muay Thai background, it's going to be different of a training stimulus, or I know, what they're coming from as opposed to a wrestling background, as opposed to a boxing background, or if they come from a ball sport, right? If they're coming from football or soccer or rugby or footy, something like that, you got to understand what they've been through and what's their strengths and weaknesses from that sport that they played before, okay? Fiber type, fast twitch, slow twitch dominance. Primarily, you're going to have a lot of the fighters are slow twitch, depending on what they've trained in the past, and obviously genetic makeup too. And I have a ton of both, but I would say for me, it's more towards the slow twitch. And that's just primarily how they train. A lot of the times they've actually brought their fast twitch to slow twitch because that's how they train. They may have been. What's up?
What do you think? Because I'm constantly when I'm assessing my athletes, I'm looking at obviously I like to make sure they get confident of doing things they're familiar with. But I find a lot of what I do is trying to balance out or undo how they're fucking themselves up.
Sure.
Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of guys got terrible posture. They're weak in their shoulders. Or their hip is too tight. A lot of what I do is do contrast work.
Sure.
Just to get injured. When you get an athlete dominantly slow, you've got someone or something it's just knives,
monster.
Muscle fiber types. Do you find if you've got a good amount of time with that athlete, you then work on the weaker side of their game? If they're a real anaerobic animal, do you try and work on their aerobic threshold, their base, or vice versa? Do you take somebody who might be able to go all day, every day, but is weak, strengthen them up? How
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. So, you know what I'm going to say, right? It depends.
No, I know it's very general.
No, but I get you.
From a philosophy point of view,
sure.
Look at somebody, you're this guy's kind of one-dimensional. He could fight 10 rounds, but he's not knocking anyone out.
Yes.
Or
got you.
Do you then, is it obviously you're not necessarily the MMA coach, but in my role, I'm often the SNC and the MMA coach.
Sure, yeah. And the good thing is you do have a background in martial arts, which is good, and you can kind of correlate that together. What I would say is if you have the time in a camp, if you definitely want to work on their weaknesses outside of camp. So you want to build on their aerobic capacity if they're anaerobically sound, right? If they're fast twitch dominant, you want to work on slow twitch. You want to make sure that they have the amount of, they want to bring up their VO2, you want to bring up their lactate threshold, you want to bring those things up, right? That once you get into camp, you start to hone in on your skills, on the things that you're actually good at, right? It's the same thing just if you were fighting in a skills perspective, right? I'm going to bring up my boxing if I'm predominantly a wrestler, but once I start camp, I'm going to work on the shit I know that's going to win me the fight. You know what I'm saying? Now, that depends again on how much time we have in camp. If we do not have that amount of time, you have to work concurrent. You see what I'm saying? Okay, and I'm going to go over some of those periodization schemes that I utilize. And sometimes I'll even use conjugate. All right? I'll show you. But that makes sense. Does that answer your question? Do you guys get that? Okay. So a program is only as good as the one administering. That means you, right? It's only as good as the coach and how they actually go about prescribing that individualized program. All right, we want to have principles in line to help you stay on course. So you have to have your own principles. I don't like to say I have a philosophy because I'm not a philosopher, right? I may say some philosophical shit, but I'm not a philosopher, right? So I like to have my principles in line, right? So I have a base of principles that I know that I can go to, putting each individual program in place, right? But if you're just kind of collecting things and not really putting them in and not really making it your own, then your program isn't you. And like I said, it's only as good as you. Okay, so you want to have principles in place. That makes sense, to having principles, right? You want to have a mindset of what you want to accomplish with your athlete. Okay, that could mean, injury reduction. And I don't say injury prevention because it's very hard to prevent injuries in this sport. So I say injury reduction, and then progression when it comes from a strength adaptation or an aerobic adaptation. We want to make sure we're progressing them. Have a variety of exercises that you can call upon to enhance performance. You want to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. Okay, you don't want to be structured to only 10 exercises. I have, fucking hundreds of exercises in my toolbox ready to go. And so that they can understand all different types of movement patterns and get them efficient in those movement patterns. Of course, they have to have the prerequisites for those movement patterns first. Okay, so baseline of tools or baseline of exercises to start with, and then we can start to play with other exercises to get them better. Okay, it's just like throwing a jab, right? I'm going to throw my jab until my jab is crisp. Then I'll be able to show them to throw the hook, uppercut, too. You see what I'm saying? So we want to make sure that the basics are down first, and then we can utilize those large amounts of tools in the toolbox to get them better. Be confident in your knowledge of the situation and be confident in all aspects of the sport. So you have to be confident, right? And confidence is attractive. If you show confidence in your abilities to coach, your athlete, your fighter, is going to be more apt to trusting in your abilities. If you're timid and you're not loud, you're not speaking from your diaphragm, right? You're not out there. There's a reason why I talk so low. People, you talk so low. It's funny. Okay, all jokes aside, not really. But most people think I sound like a black dude. On the phone, they call me, man, I thought you were black. No, bro. I just speak from my diaphragm. I speak from my balls. Sorry. That's it. Okay? But that shows a level of security, of confidence, right? So when I stepped out there, and it helped because I was a fighter. But my first day at American Top Team, I trained Dustin Poirier, King Molawal, Hector Lombard, Tisha Torres, and one other guy. And I stayed at my dominance there. Now, I could have been shy and timid. Oh, these guys are high level. But I knew what I knew, and I knew that they didn't know what I know. You see what I'm saying? So even though they're very, accomplished in their sport, I'm the professional here now. You see what I'm saying? So when you get guys and girls, and this is going to happen because the sport of MMA is going to grow in Australia. We have to be ready. And when you get guys and girls that come from out of the country and they're high level and they're like, oh, I want to train him or her, you got to understand that you are the professional here now. This is my expertise. You're stepping in my house. And you're going to respect what we do, and they will respect you for it. That makes sense, right? Just want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay? Maintain patience with the athlete and or coaches to keep progression going. Now, this is a main thing with a lot of the skills coaches. You're going to have battles with them. I still do. All right? I can't tell you how many times me and Mike Brown been going at it and clashing heads because he thought that wrestling was the only thing they needed to get stronger. Okay? It's going to happen. You have to show them statistical data and also show them that you know what you're talking about, right? but also maintain a level of communication with the coaches. Also the fighters, but mainly the coaches that you're working with. That's what happens to a lot of strength and conditioning coaches. They don't have lines of communication with their skills coaches, and then they usually clash, and they have their fighter doing too much shit. So once they get into the weight room, or once they get into, you know, strength and conditioning, they're useless, right? And then they blame who? They blame the strength coach because we overworked them. They shouldn't have been lifting weights. They shouldn't have been running. They shouldn't have been doing whatever. But at the same time, they have them doing, you know, multiple takedowns in 2-hour fashions, drilling in fucking live goals for 2 hours straight. And that taxed them, and that didn't tax them over, we're over here trying to do corrective exercises. You know, but it is what it is. You have to communicate. Don't be an asshole about it, but still communicate. Okay? Create a solid trust between the fighters and other coaches in the process of a fight camp. How you create trust is through communication and through showing that the shit works. So that's why statistical data is going to be your security blanket, in a sense, right? That's my insurance policy. If I can show that I'm actually progressing the fighter from a statistical standpoint, not just how they're feeling and how they're looking, because they may say that, okay, because they're feeling and looking better in sparring or in wrestling, they may say, oh, that's because we've been drilling nonstop and now they're in shape because we've been drilling it. Okay? So you're never going to get that unless you show them your baseline assessment and your end of camp assessment and how they progress from those numbers. Okay? That makes sense? Okay. Any questions on that?
Do you find like you're saying, like it's a bit of a battle that if you've got an athlete who's kind of overtrained, and you're like, all right, we'd be on a recovery week, wherever you are in periodization, but then their coach is like, no,
yes,
you need to train harder, and you're like, no, you need to chill. And they're like, oh, but don't I need that X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult? Like, obviously, you're working with top level professionals getting paid money.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of guys get paid nothing.
Yeah.
They're trying to function like professionals.
Sure.
They're technically pros. They get paid.
Yeah.
They get paid much.
Yeah.
Their Muay Thai coach might be saying, no, you need to do an extra 20 minutes and whatever. And they're like, no, you actually need to relax. You've got plenty of exercises. Stop doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, the battle, or the thing that I've found difficult is that, like, you're looking at leadership, right? Dominant. I don't want to badmouth anybody, you know what I mean? I don't want to say he's the don't listen to him, whatever. Like, I'm trying to keep that cohesion in the team.
And you don't. Not with the fighter. You don't. Right? Yeah. You keep it quiet with the fighter. Just educate them on proper means of auto-regulation. Show them that actually resting helps.
This
right?
is real tough because a lot of high-level coaches, like especially martial arts,
I got you.
They also like.
I got you.
I mean, I've been in the health fitness industry like 17 years. Technically, I'm an old guy out there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like young in the game compared to so many like elite, like high-level guys. But these guys have come from the background of more road work, more skipping, more gas tank work. That's their approach to doing that. So they're very indoctrinated in that. And they're like, I haven't really, a lot of what I do is just try and counter that.
Yeah.
Not verbally with the fighter, but just trying to make sure what we're doing in the gym is like just counteracting.
Yeah. And it's hard when you have a structured deload and then you have them actually doing more work in their skills training, and it kind of degrades the deload, right? The good thing about what I do, like I said, is I educate the fighter, right? So if I can have them buy in, they'll be more apt to telling their coach. And that's what you do. You get the fighter to work with you, right? Because they ultimately have the final say-so in their career. If they don't want to do something, be like, coach, man, I feel like shit. I'm not going to do it. I actually gave Dustin an article on super compensation. And he was like, man, now I feel good about actually resting. And he comes back 10 times better, right? It was a fucking bullshit article. I was like, yo, bro, just read this. I said, no, I don't even think I gave him an article. I just said, read up on super compensation. And he did. And after that, he was like, man, I feel way better about resting. He told Mike Brown that he's not coming in. He told Mike Brown that, okay?
I see that so much. Like, so working in a field where oftentimes rehab as well.
Mhm.
And they just get given these random exercises just like a plan, and nobody ever really understands what they're doing. It's oh yeah, I'm just doing this exercise. I don't understand the context of it. I don't understand how it's going to affect body movement or how it integrates. And then sometimes you sit there and you explain the process, what you're trying to achieve, and then show them before and after. Like, and it sticks. It makes a massive difference.
Yep.
Show that.
For sure. Yep. No, it really is. It's like I said, it's communicating and educating, right? So you got to make sure that you have the fighter buy-in. Once the fighter understands it, they'll relay that over to the skills coaches, and now you have them on your side. And that's all we need at that point, because they're going to take advantage of everything that you tell them to do, and they're going to take, you know, their whole career in their own hands. We don't want, I hate to say this, but we don't want the skills coaches, you know, dictating the entire camp, because a lot of them, and I'm not saying all of them, they don't know how to properly periodize because they got the quote unquote old school mentality. And I don't want to say that you have to fucking, you know, go back and forth with the skills coaches, you know, but at the same time, it's hard. If it's hard and they're really like closed-minded and they don't want to listen and they don't want to learn, then you have to have the fighter get involved and get in with the right situation. That makes sense, right?
Something I done recently was, I think you'd agree with, but it was kind of a compliment to the fighter because he's got a very traditional Muay Thai coach.
Yeah.
It's like 8 to 10K a day no matter what, you don't fight sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of compromised with him. He's coming in, he's got a fight in 3 weeks now, so he's kind of picking up his training's picked up, all that sort of stuff. So he would still usually be doing 8 to 10K a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said, right, give me 3 weeks of what I want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then see how you go from there. And then his skills coach as well, he saw that he was coming in with a lot more energy.
Yeah.
You know, wasn't heaving as much, not as much impact, hitting a lot harder, all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was training a lot harder in the weight room as well. So then the skills coach then kind of changed his mind and said, yeah, that's fine. You know, as long as he's looking good and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And the fighter was feeling a lot better as well.
Yeah, that'll work. You know, as long as
like 2 or 3 weeks, he done just what I wanted him to do. So
yeah,
you know, we didn't take out the runs altogether.
Sure.
You're never really going to get that.
Listen, as long as you're getting the stimulus adaptation that you're trying to acquire and not overtraining, you did your job, right? So whatever the case and how